Don't skip this trigger warning. We do talk about sexual assault in this episode. And so if you've got little ears listening, or if it's a trigger for you, I wanted to let you know that we do approach it with faith, and we hear her story, and it's really impactful. Can't wait to share it.
For the first time, I made an appointment with a bishop in the new ward that I was in. I told him what happened, and he's like, I'd been praying about you, and I had been wondering what's going on. And I was like, why do you even care? That the other person didn't care, and they blamed me for this thing.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I'm staying here.
To whom else shall we go?
The Why I Stay podcast, where we find joy in staying in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm your host, Lindsay Clyde, and I want to ask you, why do you stay?
What if I told you I had a special treat for you today? Yay! Today's episode is what's the word? I'm not even sure I have a word for it. Tiffany is such a beautiful soul. I just feel like peace like a river in her, which is interesting because she's going to tell us about her life story, her backstory, and where she came from, what she has walked through, and who she is now. Mind blown. I told her afterwards, after we were done recording, that she is exactly what this world needs right now. She is the voice that we need to hear and understand and help heal our hearts. Her testimony of living prophets and how the Lord has guided her and helped her through some of the most excruciating circumstances in her life is a testimony builder to me. And I just was so humbled to sit here and witness this. So don't skip this trigger warning. We do talk about sexual assault in this episode. And so if you've got little ears listening, or if it's a trigger for you, I wanted to let you know that we do approach it with faith, and we hear her story, and it's really impactful. Can't wait to share it. So let's go. Tiffany. Hello and welcome back to the Why I Stay podcast, the podcast where we discover how is it possible to stay despite difficult and hard things that we go through in our lives. How can we stay? Why do we stay? Today we have with us Tiffany. Tiffany, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We are excited to have you. So listeners, if it's your first time here, thank you for being here. And here's how it's going to go. We're going to do a series of rapid fire get to know you questions for Tiffany. Then we are going to ask a few exploratory questions to get an insight into her life in living and working with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And then the last question everybody gets is, why do you stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? So Tiffany, are you ready for the rapid fires?
I'll do my best.
Okay.
Let's go.
Let's go. Okay, Tiffany, how old are you?
I am in my 40s.
Do you have any nicknames?
Okay, so my sister calls me Tiffy, and my best friend Chris, she calls me Tiffers. So now my friends call me one of those two.
Tiffers is so cute. It feels like a little bunny rabbit cute name or like a little fluffy name. I love it.
It's so random.
I love it. What state do you live in?
I live in California.
What's your favorite food?
Okay, so this one is, it's called pho. It's a Vietnamese beef noodle soup.
Yes.
You don't call it Vietnamese pho, you just call it pho. Another favorite dish of mine is tacos, sashimi, Korean barbecue. I love everything, but pho is my go-to.
Amazing. What is a current hobby that you have?
Okay, so this sounds weird. I don't know if raising a puppy counts as a hobby, but I'm trying
totally.
to learn. Yeah, he's been a big hobby of mine, but sailing. I recently met some friends that are into sailing around here in the Bay Area, and I just go along for these charters. I help out and be a part of the crew. It's very different, and it's very rewarding.
I've seen, when we lived in Boston, I would see the sailing teams, like the Harvard sailing teams and MIT sailing teams out on the Charles River. And my husband always wanted to do it. And I would see them dipping their boats to the side. And I always thought, I never want to do that. I don't want to have to learn that because it scared me, but it seems really cool though.
Yeah, when the boats are healing, I'm like, we're going to tip over, but they have this part to them where it's made to not do something like that. And it's such a neat experience being out on the ocean for sure.
What is your most favorite calling you've ever held?
Oh, this one's really hard. when I was the church service missionary photographer for the church. So I got to photograph the members. I used to photograph for the Ensign Mormon ads, Leahona, like the Oakland Temple rededication, Elder Anderson when he was in Bangkok, Thailand. So quite a bit. When the Elder Bednar last year, I get quite a bit of assignments. It's very unique, very personal, and I love the members. Like that's my favorite part of the calling. So photographing them has been the best part.
What is a controversial opinion that you hold? Like everybody loves Crocs, but you hate them.
Oh yeah, this one's easy. Hands down, bone and chicken wings, baby. Like I don't do the boneless. I need the bones. I don't understand why you want boneless. Don't do that to me. Yeah.
Why do they even offer it is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, it's so weird. Don't even call it chicken wings. It's not a chicken wing.
It's just like, it's like overly tough, like balls of chicken sinew. Like it's not even, I am with you, bone in all the way.
Thank
you
you.
and me, you
Thank
come
you.
to Utah and we will go get some wings together because you're my kind of girl.
Yeah.
What is your biggest dream?
Okay, so it sounds so cheesy, but my biggest dream is actually being a mother one day, but also becoming a crisis intervention nurse. So I think the latter is probably more realistic than becoming a mom. I've had my time and that didn't happen. And so I feel like it's time to really get involved.
That's so beautiful. What great dreams. What is something about you that is the same now as it was when you were in high school?
I'm a people watcher. I grew up a loner, and so when I was in high school, I people watch all the time. People thought it was a very weird thing back then in the 90s, but now you find people watchers everywhere. I love being a wallflower and just appreciating the world around me.
Okay, here's the bonus question that everybody gets. You have to eat bone-in chicken wings for the rest of your life with one sauce flavor. What sauce flavor is that?
Oh, that's easy. It's the Vietnamese style chicken wings, hands down. Yeah, like it's my favorite. This sounds weird as I describe the ingredients, but it's garlic, sugar, fish sauce.
That's it.
That's my jam right there. I grew up eating that. That was like an after school snack. When I'd come home, my mom would have that for me besides a pot of rice, and it was just my go-to, like hands down. Yeah.
So cool. I have to try it. Sounds yummy.
Come to the Bay. I'll take you.
I will be there. All right. Thank you so much for indulging us in this little rapid fire get to know you. Today, we're going to ask you some exploratory questions. And the first one we have for you is, when is a time that you gained a testimony of living prophets?
Okay. So let's see. I grew up in East San Jose. I grew up in the hood. College wasn't much talked about in my family and especially amongst my friends. And when I became LDS, I was active in the church when I was 17. And, after I graduated high school and I started going to the Singles Ward, my friends were encouraging me to go to college. And I was like, why would I do that? And a leader had encouraged that I go. And so I hitchhiked to school. I went there after having applied and getting in. And it was so bizarre. I go from like a big city, San Jose, to all of a sudden like small town, Rexburg, Idaho.
Yeah.
There's 5,000 people living there. 4,000 of them were members. And I didn't have a car, so I'd hitchhike anywhere I needed to go to. People happily gave rides and they were so happy to be friends with each other. It was very different from what I grew up with. And they had on Tuesday nights, they would have like these devotionals. I think they still have it now. And church leaders will come and give, talks. And this one time, my roommates and I, we were listening to a leader talk, and it turned out to be this lady that was speaking, and I fell in love with what she had to say. And after the talk, I had gone up to her and I said, "Hey, I want to thank you for this because X, Y, and Z made me feel really good." And so we were talking, and then out of nowhere, this guy, he puts his hand out to shake my hand, and I turn around and I'm like, okay, so I shake his hand, and all my friends around me just like pause. And then he goes, "I feel like there's something very urgent that you need to learn. My wife and I would like to invite you to attend our family home evenings." And he was the husband of the lady who had spoke. And I was like, yeah, sure. So I grabbed the card and he said, just call my secretary and then you can attend one of these family home evenings that we hold. And I was like, sure. At that time, I had very short hair, probably like 2 inches. And I have a tattoo on my right side of my neck. And it was the president of Rick's College and his wife that had invited me. And so I called the secretary at 10 one family home evening, and it was weird because what they do is they open up with a prayer, and then they read and they sing a song, and they invite people to ask random questions. The secretary had called me back, and she was like, "Hey, you're invited to attend more family home evenings." And I was like, "What? Really? You're supposed to only attend one?" And she's like, "No, you're welcome to come back." And so I attend probably like 7 of them. Through attending these family home evenings, I realized that personal revelation is real. Like, the Spirit doesn't just testify that the Book of Mormon and the Bible is true, and that Joseph Smith had restored the gospel of Jesus Christ, right? Like, it was applicable to my personal life. I didn't know that. And so I go there, and I'm in this new environment. It's very clean. We had curfews at college, and that was very different from what I grew up with. I was a homeless teen for quite a bit, and all of a sudden there was like rules and boundaries, but I didn't complain because I had something I never had before, and it made me feel safe. And so I attended these family home evenings, and I walked away with 3 promptings. The first one was I needed to return home from school, which made me really sad. And I doubted that was even a prompting, but it was. Another prompting was to do my family history. And then the third one was to let go of the resentment that I had towards my mom and to allow her back in my life. And I was like, this is very strange. And so while I'm at school, I started doing family history, and I found that I had an older half-sister, but I also found my father. My parents divorced when I was really young, and I didn't know who my dad was. And so when I met my older half-sister, I learned that I had more family to just my mother and my sister. And I had all these like half-siblings, this other family. But I also learned something very important that I didn't know either, was that I was actually mixed race. And my mother, she's Asian, but my father, he's Black. I never knew that. And that was very important for me. And I thought, oh, okay. And I was 19 years old when I learned this information. I learned it a little bit before in other experiences, but it was never talked about in our home. The prompting about going home from college, I went home. I was really sad about that. And then a few weeks later, my younger sibling came to live with me. And that was because my mother had gotten sick and couldn't take care of my sister anymore. So I put aside college and helped take care of my sister so that she can get through high school and get started in life. And it was just us. She was my buddy, my best friend. It was very hard times, but it was my favorite time in my life because there's nothing like being close to family. Family's everything. And then the third one was, it was letting my mom back in my life. And I was estranged from my family for 4 years at that time. I hadn't talked to my mom for 4 years. And then when we started talking, she had passed away like 4 months later, 4 to 6 months later, something like that. But this person that was the president of this college, his name was President Bednar. And he's now an apostle. And I just remembered thinking how these apostles aren't sustained at the moment they get the calling. I mean, yes, we sustain them, but they've been prepared long before. And so I look back and I go, gosh, like, miracles doesn't happen just in that moment. It happens over time. And that is my personal testimony that apostles are living testaments of the Savior and of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
What a beautiful story, and so interesting that you bring it up tonight, because I was reading in my scriptures just like randomly. One of them was from Elder Bednar, and he loves to talk about line upon line. Like he says a lot of times we expect our answers to our prayers to suddenly just like come to us all at once and be there in that moment. He said, but that's very rare. It's actually that like the Lord will feed us a little bit of information at a time, and as we follow it, like we receive more and we understand more as it goes along. And I see that happening in this story as well, that like as you acted on your little promptings to, join the church, to go to school, to go to these family home evenings, and to act on the things that the Lord was inspiring you, like not only were you able to heal somewhat of your relationship with your mom before she passed away, but also like you were able to gain a testimony and a witness of one of the Lord's apostles, his ordained apostles, all at the same time. Like it's so amazing how all of that just kind of wraps up, and that it was just your faith, you're going forward with these things that were really hard to do. that brought all of this to pass. That is an amazing witness. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we're going to kind of like blend a few of them. So you're going to give us a little information into like what is an experience that increased your maturity or courage in living the gospel, and when have you had to go on faith, like in your life? When has that happened for you?
Okay, so there's this experience that I went through, and it didn't happen overnight. It took several years to go through, and it's what I called and what has been labeled the questions of faith journey for me. And people call it their faith crisis. They call it a truth expansion, faith expansion, all sorts of names. Call it whatever you want. But for me, back into January 2016, I was raped, and I had gone to a trusted faith leader for asking for a blessing because I didn't know what to do. And when I went to this faith leader, the faith leader actually blamed me for being sexually assaulted and for being raped. And he called me back in for another interview about the situation, and he still resulted in saying that it was my fault. And people have said things like, "Oh, he's imperfect. You need to forgive him. Just let it go." Like those were actually very dismissing comments. But what it did for me is like it snapped something inside me, and I stopped believing completely. Because what had happened was that I grew up sexually assaulted a lot. In 1999, I had received a blessing. It said, upon my obedience and sacrifice, that I would be protected and that I would not be sexually assaulted anymore in my life. And I just became active in the church, and I didn't understand why that had happened, and I just dismissed it. I was just like, just keep moving forward, keep being active in the church, like have these tools to help me with healing. But when this thing happened in 2016, I was heartbroken, I was devastated, and I shut down. I went into survival mode. I distanced myself from a lot of my friends that were members. It just made sense to just go for safety. Anyone that reeked of any kind of spirituality, any kind of religion, I just stayed away from them because nothing made sense anymore. And so I went back to drinking because you self-medicate. I put my heart into my travel photography that I had at that time and at my job. I just overwhelmed myself because I kept wanting to be busy and just avoid dealing with what had happened to me. Well, 2 years had gone by, and one day my iPhone 5 was updating, and the app for the Gospel 2 library froze on my screen. And I thought I deleted this thing. I was like, why would I have this still on my phone? So I looked at it with disgust, and I took the finger to try to delete it. And it didn't do that. It just opened up the app for some reason, and it opened up a bunch of talks. And I thought, why don't I just try reading a talk? I got time before I go to work, why not? And what was weird too was that the night before, I was in a moment where I was ruminating, and I talked to a loved one and said, why would this happen to me? Why would God try to give me a blessing and say this wouldn't happen, but it did? And this makes absolutely no sense. Like, was I not obedient enough? Did I not sacrifice enough? And the loved one, out of grace, was just like, why don't you just pray about it? And I'm like, why would I pray about being raped again? Like, who does that? This sounds like the most selfish, stupid thing ever. And that night I did. And so the next morning, when I talked about the phone updating, it happened. And I saw these talks, and I just closed my eye and I said, I'll just randomly pick a talk. Why not? And so I closed my eyes, randomly picked a talk, and then opens up is a talk by Elder Anderson called Overcoming the World. And it just talks about the experiences that we go through, that whether they're in our control or out of our control, it's part of our experience in learning how to develop spiritual self-reliance. And it's something I personally call spiritual grit. And so I read this talk, and for the first time in my life, I thought, okay, my being raped wasn't my fault. This talk made me actually start thinking about there is a God. And I have shut him out of my life for 2 years. And ever since I read that talk, Overcoming the World, I was like, okay, maybe there is a God, there is a God. And several months had gone by, and I was driving home from traffic, and I thought, wait, if there's a God, could this mean that I am a child of God? Am I a daughter of God? And then I felt that break in my heart that hurt so badly. I just said, okay, this is strange. And after I got through traffic, I went over to go pick up some food. When I walked through the restaurant, these two people had turned around and looked at me, and they said, "Hi, how are you today?" And I looked at, they saw that I was tearing up because I had just moments ago started crying about thinking, I am a daughter of God, I'm a child of God. And these two turned around, looked at me, smiled, and said, "Hey, do you know that you're a daughter of God?" And they're like, "We'd like to talk to you about being a child of God." And I looked at them, and I saw they had the badges. And they were missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm like, what are the chances? Like, I'm going to go get Hawaiian food, and I see them. But that set off like a domino effect of experiences where I started to pivot. And I was hardcore about not believing in God. Going back to what was safe for me when I stopped believing was not believing in anything. And so for the first time, I made an appointment with a bishop in the new ward that I was in. I told him what happened, and he's like, I'd been praying about you, and I had been wondering what's going on. And I was like, why do you even care? That the other person didn't care, and they blamed me for this thing. It makes no sense to me. And so I had a series of experiences, again, answering these questions that I didn't think that I'd get, but I had to be very open to receiving truth. Truth is truth, and sometimes truth is hard. And I go back to Elder Anderson's talk called Overcoming the World, and I thought, I am not above these experiences to help me heal. Like, I need to not get in my way. I need to be open to them. I told my new bishop, I was like, I'd like to go to the temple, and I'll do whatever it takes. And he's like, really? I was like, yeah, whatever it takes. Sometime a week later, I remember the scriptures. I remember Jacob 5, which is an intense scripture, intense chapter in Jacob.
Yeah.
And I start to remember things, and things start to hold weight in my everyday life. I'm like, I can function again. And it happened to be because of this blessing from this priesthood leader. And I felt, when I finished reading it, I felt this undeniable truth spoken to me. Like something that had been missing. I realized, okay, this is home. This is home. And I felt this in the temple. The temple's home. The Book of Mormon and the Bible is home. I grew up with spirituality. I recognize that. I know that this makes me feel safe, courageous, and peaceful. I am not going to turn my back. I'm going to keep moving forward and pivot in this direction into the gospel of Jesus Christ.
That is incredible. My heart just goes out to you and anybody who's listening who has ever had a similar experience, that it is not your fault, and that the Lord sees you, that our Father in heaven sees you, and you are a child of God. And I just respect so much that you were able to come back. And when you said, truth is hard, I just feel that like down to my bones, that like when I can grasp that, I can stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That like,
right.
That like our lives and the truth of them and like what God is doing and working on our lives, that is hard sometimes. Sometimes it does not feel, what's the word? It doesn't feel comfortable, fair, deserved even more than fair. Like couldn't there be another way? Right.
Yeah.
And I don't have any answers for that, but what you expressed is so beautiful. Yeah, go ahead. Tell me what you're going to say.
I realized I need not to be afraid of asking the questions, like the CS letter. There's answers out there. I feel like you can find any answer to any question you have. And I sometimes feel like, just like with AI, you can make anything out there with it. But to have that alongside the Holy Ghost testifying of truth, recognizing what is safe, comfortable, and peaceful and correct, that definitely helps me. But like the CS letter, the race in the priesthood, Joseph Smith's polygamy, you have to be willing to not just hear one side. There's multiple sides, and just to let God testify to you which one's like applicable. And they all, oddly enough, a lot of them matter. And truth is truth. And you have to overcome this world. You have to be willing to accept the truth, even if it's ugly and doesn't feel good. Because there's truth out there that does feel good and it's great. And it's a lot simpler than we make it out to be.
And it comes hand in hand sometimes, because when I read the comments that people will leave on Instagram, bringing up these difficult topics, you know, I see that, and I see what they're saying. I understand how they can have those angry, like disgusted, hard feelings towards those things, but we have to find a way to hold all of it at once. Because if you decide to immerse yourself in the gospel of Jesus Christ and live by its correct principles and invite Jesus Christ to heal you, like the fruits of doing that, as taught by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, bring you joy. Like, I love what you said. You said safety, courage, and I think you said peace.
Right.
It does. It totally does. But following the path of like doubt and anger and feeling selfish, this shouldn't happen, like I don't deserve this or they didn't deserve this, following those feelings doesn't bring safety, courage, or peace for me. And so I've realized I have to find a way to be okay with this, because it's both. Like this is the truth. Like it just is. And we can feel uncomfortable with it, or even angry toward it, but that doesn't change the reality of God and his restoring the church on the earth today.
Exactly. And you have to own those ugly feelings. It just, it works. It works no other way. I think it's very important for people to understand the stories in the marginalized community, because you then will have a better understanding of the restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ and how we fit in. We all fit in that big story, right? We are all important puzzle pieces for that truth. So like my questions of faith was really hard and difficult, but then through the uniqueness of my life and the diversity of the world, I was able to find the answers through personal revelation from the Holy Ghost. And that's what got me through my faith crisis.
We need your voice so much. Like we need that witness and that testimony, because there's only so much that I, as a white person raised in the gospel, you know, never having to deal with these racial issues that you obviously have, and that people like of color in general still do today, right? There's only so much I can say to try and like say like, well, but the church is still true. But to hear you speak about it, like you were uniquely called and raised up and brought to this point to be able to share that testimony. I mean, and if you can say those words, like that heals some things for me as well. Like that really feels so beautiful and amazing for you to be so like humble, and it just really feels really, what's the word, mature, I guess, very calm and reasonable and peaceful about it, accepting the realities and the hard parts of it. It just, thank you for sharing that with us. Tiffany, it's been such a privilege to hear you speak and just to be a witness to your journey and what has brought you to this point. And I just want to thank you for that. Let's go to the final question. Are you ready for the final question?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's
Whatever
go.
it takes. Let's go. Yeah.
Tiffany, why do you stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
It's because this is where Heavenly Father wants me to be. My Heavenly Parents want me here. And nothing in my life is above having the atonement of Jesus Christ in my life. Nothing. I've been through my share of experiences to know better. I'm not here to be right, but to get it right. And I feel like things that bring me closer to what's safe and true and peaceful and kind and courageous, that's where I want to follow. That's the path I want to take. And right here for me, the gospel of Jesus Christ, the restoration is real. It did happen. And it's not one narrative. There's so many things out there. I see life in Technicolor because of it. And it's ongoing, like you said. That's why I stay.
It's beautiful. Tiffany, thank you for your time today and for your courage in sharing your story with us. We needed it. So thank you so much. My heart is healed by hearing the things that she has to say. She brings a perspective that is so needed. And I hope that you were able to have your perspective broadened or maybe even echoed in what she had to say. If you love this episode, please share it with a friend. I know people need to hear this, and the only way they're going to is if you put it out there. So thank you so much. And if you'd like to come on this podcast and share your light and your testimony of Jesus Christ and why you stay, email me at whyistaypodcast@gmail.com. And I wanted to say thank you so much to my sister, Macy, who is editing these episodes. I am no longer a one-lady show. We got 2 ladies in this show now. Thank you, Macy. I really appreciate all the work that you do. And don't edit this part out. And don't edit that part out. Leave this all in. All right. Thank you, guys. We will see you next week. And again, thank you for staying with us.
The Why I Stay podcast is a faith-based podcast exploring the lives and experiences of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This podcast is not produced or endorsed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but we do love that church. All rights reserved. And a great big shout out to Fast Sounds from Pixabay for the amazing and jammin' intro-outro music. Thanks, guys.